Hey Trekkies, welcome back to another Yelling About Star Trek video. My name is Christian Fox, and this is the show where I yell at you about all things Star Trek for your amusement. Today, I want to explore the new Captain Kirk situation and explain why I think that Captain Kirk was different and not necessarily worse. Now, if you're watching this video, then you probably know that the new Captain Kirk was revealed in the season 1 final episodes of Strange New Worlds, Equality of Mercy. And that Captain Kirk was played by actor Paul Wesley. And I would say from watching it, I liked his portrayal for the most part, but I felt that his swagger wasn't quite there. I would say he had 60% of the usual Captain Kirk swagger, but I actually think that makes sense and isn't necessarily a bad thing. And there's actually two reasons that I think this to be the case. Now, I'll be completely honest. My first reason is sort of based on an interview that Paul Wesley did, but mostly based on my own interpretation. And the second reason is primarily because of the Paul Wesley interview. And I keep saying Paul Wesley in this video. It is a fun name to say. So my first reason is that the Captain Kirk that we're introduced to in the final is captain, but he's captain of the Farragut. And the Farragut, as we know, is a good ship. There's nothing wrong with the Farragut. The Farragut has been mentioned in a lot of Trek before, but the Farragut is not the Enterprise. And Captain Kirk, much like every other Starfleet officer in the series, is aware that the Enterprise is the creme de la creme. This is the pride of the fleet. This is the flagship. This is the ship that everybody wants to be on. And when you look at the original series, Captain Kirk was very proud of being the captain of the Enterprise and would often say, "I'm captain of the Enterprise," in that William Shatner, "I'm the best thing in the world" kind of way. And it made sense because, yeah, he was captain of the Enterprise and he was also a very young captain, one of the youngest in Starfleet. So he has two things. I'm the youngest captain in Starfleet, or one of the youngest, and I'm captain of the Enterprise. Whereas Paul Wesley's Captain Kirk doesn't have that. He has the age, and he's like still top of the class, but he's captain of the Farragut and doesn't have quite the same, "I'm as amazing because my ship isn't quite on the Enterprise" level. And I even talked about this in my most recent podcast episode, also called Yelling About Star Trek, by the way, where I comment on the fact that we get a classic scene where Uhura is like, "Oh my gosh, we're under attack, blah, blah, blah." And there's another starship coming in. And this is usually the hype moment. And this is usually the part in the episode where someone will say, "Sir, there's another starship coming in. It's the Enterprise." And well, obviously, because we're on the Enterprise, it can't be. So it's the Farragut. And it's like, "Great, the Farragut's here. Sir, there's another starship coming in. It's the Farragut." All right, well, glad the Farragut's here. What's the Farragut going to do? It's going to probably save the day. Is it going to save us? I don't know. It's the Farragut. Okay. And I'm making a joke here, but the Farragut doesn't have the same reputation and the same like, "Oh my gosh, it's the Farragut," that the Enterprise does. And I think this Captain Kirk is very much aware of that. He doesn't have the Enterprise and he only has the Farragut. And again, he's not upset about the Farragut. He likes the Farragut. It's his ship. But he doesn't have the same swagger that we're used to because he doesn't have command of the pride of Starfleet. And as I said, he does mention this in this Hollywood Reporter interview, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And the second thing I want to talk about comes directly from the interview where he says, obviously the season 1 final is in an alternate timeline that doesn't exist because it takes place in the future. He's not captain of the Enterprise, he's never met Spock, and he's never had all of those experiences. It's a Kirk who has been shaped differently, so in the season 1 final, it really was open to interpretation. And I think this makes a lot of sense because we're not only shaped by our experiences, but we're also shaped by those who surround us. So if you were to take yourself out of this timeline, put yourself into an alternate timeline where you've had different experiences and surrounded by different people, then you would be very different than the person you are right now watching this video. But what about you? Do you agree with my theories as to why this Captain Kirk is very different than Prime Kirk and New Trek Kirk? Or do you have another theory that makes more sense? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And in the paraphrased words of Captain Kirk, I shall see you out there. That-a-way.